And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Joined by Eric Eggers to talk a little bit about voter fraud, broken voting machines throughout the country. What does this mean when we're talking about the legitimacy, the credibility of the midterms and the next presidential vote? Eric, good to have you with us.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Glad to be here.
This really, unfortunately, plays into your book, Fraud, How the Left's Plan to Steal the Next Election plays out. So what's the latest from Arizona?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, what's bad for democracy is good for my book, and that's the position I get to be in today.
Right.
But yeah, no, Arizona, I think, is just the latest example of just how vulnerable our systems are. I think you're seeing that 43 counties or 43 polling places had broken machines and insufficient staffing. And I think the key point here, Kevin, is that, everyone has this blind faith and trust that we have experts and competent officials administering and overseeing our elections. And the reality is it's just not the case. It's a vendor in Arizona, right? It's a company that they hired called Insight out of Tucson. And they say they provided more staffing than the elections officials requested. But that additional staffing still ended up being not enough people to have the machines turned on and operational. Increasingly, administering elections requires you to be basically an IT professional, especially when you rely on computer technology. But many of the elections offices haven't really equipped themselves with the appropriate level of expertise or hired the right level of consultants. So, this is not news. In my book, I talk about in Miami-Dade County during the 2012 election, you had election officials stopping. Right, you saw lines get really long because elections officials would stop every so often and actually physically pick up the machines and rotate them around because they were told by somebody that was the way to make sure that they were receiving, an even number of votes across the field. So you've got massive problems. You got an elections official in South Florida that admitted that they don't even know what the word canvassing means. So that's a person that we trust to administer and oversee the collection of 1.15 million votes in Broward County, Florida. So, unfortunately, in Arizona, you're seeing the same thing.
Indeed. It's funny. I was listening to Sean Hannity the other night, and he was covering this issue and just the news reports that were going on reacting to this. And then you had the state saying they blamed the contractor telling the state to go pound sand. They had done everything in accordance to their contract. There was no sense of outrage, really.
Yeah, this is what happened. So I'm sorry that we didn't have enough sandbags, so I guess we're going to get a little flooded. It's not news. It's not unique to Nevada either. I was just reading, or not unique to Arizona either, right? You see the same thing happen in Nevada. You see the same thing happen in some precincts in California. It happens all over the place, right? So it's at the end of the day, right? And this is why I connect it to voter fraud, because to believe that voter fraud is not a problem, you have to believe that our elections are secure and run by, high-level executives with a lot of competency that make sure that the systems don't have any errors. And then you have to believe that there's nobody out there trying to exploit the inaccuracies or errors. Well, Arizona just shows you the errors that exist. And so, and the reality is we know, especially in states like Arizona, that we have organized efforts to try to manipulate the inaccuracies with groups like La Raza, groups like Acorn. They want to go up and gather as many voters as possible and figure out where the vulnerabilities are and exploit them. And so, luckily, it doesn't seem like there's any votes that are being, or any elections are being held up too much by these errors, but they just highlight how vulnerable our system is.
Eric Eggers joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. What about the illegals in voting?
Yeah, absolutely, right? And the reality is, and Kevin, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but that's the future for the Democratic Party. You see in the city of San Francisco now allow illegal immigrants to vote in local elections. Non-citizens have been allowed to vote in other municipalities like Chicago and cities in Maryland, and I think Boston's making an effort to allow them to vote as well. And this is the plan. This is the organized effort. This is the result of the organized effort between George Soros and Tom Perez, who's the head of the Democratic Party. Tom Perez, before he joined the Obama Justice Department, worked for an organization called Casa de Maryland, which is a Soros-funded outfit like Acorn and La Raza, but operates exclusively in the state of Maryland. And their whole gig was advocating for the expansion of non-citizen voting. Tom Perez's hometown of Tacoma Park, Maryland, has actually been allowing non-citizen voting since 1992. The really scary part, Kevin, is that even though there's a federal law that mandates that only American citizens can vote in federal elections, for the first time ever, you've got a majority of Democrats, 54% of Democrats and 53% of self-described liberals believe that illegal immigrants that pay taxes should be allowed to vote in federal elections. So, so you've got now, for the first time, this is so significant because if you've got a party who's advocating for the expansion of illegal immigrant voting, and you've got a population within that party that a majority of people think that's a good idea, well, it's only a matter of time, hey, while we're abolishing ICE, why don't we go ahead and allow illegals the right to vote?
I would agree with you on that. Very scary indeed. Who would have ever thought abolishing ICE would be a mainstream Democratic platform?
The guy that just won the Democratic gubernatorial election, the primary here in Florida, that's the platform he ran on.
Right.
That's one of the platforms that he ran on, and he won. And so, and he has been, by the way, just to show you kind of how these plans manifest themselves, he's actually the mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, where I live. And he brags about the fact that he has a 15-year relationship with George Soros. He's worked for Soros-funded nonprofits in addition to being an elected official at the local level. So, this is the plan, and he's worked with a network of other young professionals. So you're seeing now, him and Ocasio-Cortez in New York, and you're seeing, they were talking about a blue wave. Some people are saying, well, maybe it's the progressive socialist wave, because this is where we're seeing, these are the officials that are propping up. These are the positions that they're espousing.
Eric Eggers joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't the mayor of Tallahassee like 28 or something like that?
He's 39.
39.
He's 39. He would probably appreciate you saying he's 28. He's a young guy. He's actually been elected since he was since 2003. So I guess since he was 24, maybe, or 22. But yeah, he was elected as a city councilman while he was still at Florida A&M University. So he's still in college, and he's been on the city commission for a long time. Ran for mayor 4 years ago and won handily. And then it was kind of a long shot candidate. And the crazy thing is, I monitored the Florida gubernatorial election pretty closely. He was basically ignored. He had four other candidates that were in the race on the Democratic side, and he was pretty much ignored because his polling consistently showed him as being in third and fourth place. He got an endorsement from Bernie Sanders 2 weeks ago that really sort of started to tick up the attention. And some people would say what it really started to tick up was people realized that he was a black guy, an African-American candidate. And that, of course, had been his plan all along, is to try to court and cultivate as much African-American support as he could. So between people realizing he was an African-American and the surge in popularity because of the Bernie Sanders endorsement and the relative lack of scrutiny that, quite honestly, his very controversial reign as the mayor of the city of Tallahassee received, I think that was kind of the recipe for success. The city of Tallahassee has actually been embroiled in an FBI investigation for a couple of years. He's taken trips with undercover FBI agents that he, of course, didn't know were undercover FBI agents. He's got a lot of problems I think you'll see come out. But yeah, Florida appears to be at the center of the national picture when it comes to their gubernatorial election this fall.
Well, I think Peter Strzok's on that with him, so we can rest assured.
I'm sure, right. Yeah, who knows who else is on the plane?
But I thought Tallahassee was part of the Floribama thing. I'm surprised that you have a progressive there, considering I thought northern Florida was very conservative.
That's very insightful, Kevin. It is very conservative, but Leon County, which is the county of Tallahassee, is that blue carve-out because you've got multiple universities, you've got state capital, so you've got a lot of state government employees here. You've actually got county government employees, city government employees, state government employees, and university employees. So it's actually, because of all the government money, it's 2-to-1 majority Democrat to Republican.
Wow. So much for the Seminoles. Eric Eggers joining us. Let's talk more about your book, Fraud, Voter Fraud. How is this going to play out nationally in the midterms? Then we'll talk about the presidential election. But how do you see this? You've been warning about this for quite some time.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, the election of people like Andrew Gillum, the mayor of Tallahassee, or Ocasio-Cortez, I think what it speaks to, Kevin, is this unprecedented motivation, anger, vitriol, right? There's the guy, Andrew Gillum, the guy that just got elected in Florida. in his commercial, he calls for impeaching President Trump. So, and I don't think he's unique in that way, right? That's where the Democratic population is. So the point is you've got a motivated electorate who thinks they have the moral authority to do anything that's required to get rid of this, demonic presence, in their opinion, in terms of President Trump. So, they have the moral authority, and anything that they can do, including exploit the incredibly vulnerable voting system, seems well within their rights, in their opinion. So, yeah, I think you've got this rickety old system, right? I mean, we've got 248 counties in this country with more registered voters than citizens of legal voting age. You've got nearly 3 million people registered to vote in more than one state. You've got 24 million election or voter registrations that are significantly flawed or totally inaccurate. And when people actually employ scrutiny, then they realize, hey, there's a lot of problems here. The state of West Virginia just removed 100,000 illegal voters from their voting rolls, and the Secretary of State said, well, clean voter rolls are the first step towards ensuring that we have secure elections and fighting voter fraud. But the problem, Kevin, is that he only recently became elected. He beat a Democrat as Secretary of State, who, by the way, had been supported by George Soros as part of their Secretary of State's project, in which they target the Secretary of State officials because they want to have as lax oversight of voter fraud as possible. So, I mean, that's unfortunately not always the case, right? West Virginia is an exception. Ohio is an exception. Many states have not put that level of scrutiny there, and that's where I think we're going to see a lot of the problems.
Fraud, how the left plans to steal the next election. Author Eric Eggers joining us, research director for the government Research Director for the Government Accountability, says this, that we need to watch this, George Soros and everything else. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM. For people that aren't familiar with you, Eric, and your research, this is your first book solo, but this is not your first rodeo. You've done some high-valued work that if people would know that, they would know your work previously.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if people want to find out more about me or my book, they can go to voterfraudbook.com. But, yeah, I've worked for the Government Accountability Institute for a number of years with Peter Schweitzer. People are usually familiar with him. His last book, Secret Empires, exposed the ways in which the family members of politicians have been cashing in, including the family members of Joe Biden and John Kerry, getting billions of dollars worth of deals from the Chinese government. I worked on Clinton Cash, actually traveled to Haiti for the Clinton Cash research, and worked on the graphic novel and documentary of that as well. So, yeah, no, I've been working on the government accountability space for a long time, and, surprisingly, there's still a lot to do.
Indeed. Let's get back to the election of President Trump. You have people saying, well, he lost the popular vote. But based on your research, how many illegal voters do you think voted in that election?
Well, that's a good question. And, President Trump claims that there were 3 million votes that were cast by illegals. And I have not seen evidence to substantiate that claim. But what I have seen, and there are a number of academic studies that looked at, and this is where I think President Trump was getting this, there were a number of academic studies that looked at the 2008 election and, legitimately estimated that anywhere from 3 to 6 million illegal immigrants cast ballots in that election. So, and we know the number of illegal immigrants didn't decrease between 2008 and 2016. I mean, the reality is that you've got massive vulnerabilities with these scales. And it's not like the illegal immigrants are all sitting around and then getting like a text message or a bat signal from George Soros saying, hey, now's the time to go vote. I mean, that's not what's happening. But what is happening is these guys end up becoming the unwitting victims of the vulnerabilities. There's a reporter for the Las Vegas newspaper who interviewed 2 illegal immigrants who said they basically were forced to register to vote and then go out and vote because they were bullied by some labor unions in Las Vegas with connections to Harry Reid's campaign. So, I mean, that's what happens all the time. In Texas, they're called politiqueros. In South Florida, they're called bulleteros. These guys they're paid political operatives. They go out and they know who's on the rolls, and they go out and they harvest the votes, regardless of whether these people should be voting or not.
It's kind of like in Pennsylvania, they call it walking around money, but that's kind of regulated wham money. But
yeah, Pennsylvania, by the way, estimates and increasing evidence that as many as 100,000 non-citizens were on the voter rolls in the 2016 election. So, yeah, I mean, another great thing. Literally every pocket of the country is touched by the potential for voter fraud.
So if you're President Trump or, in general, the Republicans, every time you try to clamp down on this, people call you racist and call you all these names.
Absolutely, right? I mean, and it comes down to because the pockets of populations that tend to be suspected of voter fraud tend to be minority populations. So, anytime you want to secure voting, it ends up being charges of racism. You're trying to suppress or oppress minority turnout. The same thing with voter ID laws, right? Well, okay, it's racist to require somebody to use an ID. There's actually no evidence to support that, right? The states of Alabama, Ohio, and Georgia saw increases in minority turnout after they implemented a voter ID law. And the reality, Kevin, is, if you want to get on an airplane, if you want to buy a beer, or if you wanted to go to the Democratic National Convention in 2016, you needed to show some form of ID. So the idea that it's somehow racist to require you to do that if you want to participate in the most fundamental portion of American democracy, to me, that seems racist.
Yeah, and I don't understand it. Wherever I've gone, Eric, they've asked me for an ID, and they wouldn't let me vote without one.
Exactly. No, it's it's not a problem, and the reality is the majority of populations, including minority populations, have no problem showing an ID.
Eric, finally, what's the solution?
Yeah, I think you just got to support state officials who want to make sure that their voting rolls are accurate. So states like West Virginia, states like Ohio, there needs to be accountability at the local and state level, and you just need to be able to push back against this narrative that when you take a good look to make sure that the voting rolls are accurate, that it's not racist, it's just actually pro-American.
Eric Eckers, one more time, where can people get your book?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. They can go to voterfraudbook.com. Voterfraudbook.com. There's links to the book where you can buy it off of Amazon, and you can also read about the number of ways today in which voter fraud is still in the news and is a serious problem.
Thank you, sir. Eric, you have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. All right, Eric Eggers joining us. Want to let everybody know, big event going on tonight, the Night Glow Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. We're pumped up for that. Currently, they're in a weather hold, but still go out and check out the balloons this morning at Ann Morrison Park, brought to you by our friends at CapEd Credit Union. Phone numbers here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. If you missed our show yesterday, we started getting into this a little later, but the comments of a New York governor concerning law enforcement. Let's take a listen to it.
New York State is the state that says we will not cooperate with ICE. They're a bunch of thugs.
There we have it, Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo giving a shout-out to law enforcement. Your reaction next. Our time, 6:23. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. That's so wonderful to wake up to. The great thing about living here in the Treasure Valley is we'll never have to worry about a lib or a socialist taking over. Well, let's hope so. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller with you today. Don't forget, Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic tonight, the Night Glow. Hope to see you there. One of the wonderful events. As we say goodbye, we say farewell to summer. Hope you had a great time, and come out and join us, or for the flights Saturday and Sunday. Traffic and weather together. It is 6:27. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
Kevin's Eric Everett.
And Kevin Miller here with you here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So according to our sources in Washington, which, by the way, we invite you to join us next week as we exclusively here in the Treasure Valley broadcast live from Washington, D.C. We're going to be there having a good time. Well, I don't know if we'll have a good time, but we'll be in the swamp, and we'll be looking forward to giving you some live reports as we take a look at the immigration issue, as we do each and every year. This issue involving holding their feet to the fire from our friends at FAIR, and we do look forward to providing you that coverage coming up. NBC and MSNBC's political guru yesterday issued a warning concerning today, saying today some type of big event could happen, whether it's the Mueller dropping something or some other type of investigation, who knows? But that is from our friend Chuck Todd, apparently saying that the breaking news, there's going to be some type of news today.
No, you're just dribbling it out. We just put it all out there, will you? But anyway, you dribbled it out. We got a little bit more, which is, here's what he said about the Mueller probe. We'll put it up on the screen here. I view it as an illegal investigation because great scholars, that's his quote, have said that there never should have been a special counsel. And this was an answer when asked if he would comply with a subpoena from Mueller. He said, I'll see what happens there. He talks about the Mueller being an illegal probe all the time. Let me ask this, Brad. Do any of his supporters wonder why he just doesn't end it? He has the power. He's the president.
You know, I actually don't think many of his supporters think very much about the Mueller probe. I think the president thinks about it a lot more than his supporters do.
I think the president thinks about it more than anybody around this table sometimes.
I think the president's voters will wait till the Mueller probe is over with, and then they'll see what he has and evaluate it. Like I don't think it's something that they're obsessed about. Washington is obsessed about it. It leads the paper every day.
Sure.
It doesn't lead the paper in Kenosha.
No, that I buy. He has the power to end these things if he really wanted to.
Well, maybe he should. Maybe that'll happen today. More next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin.
And thank you all. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Did you know KIDO Talk Radio is your home for Fox News on the radio, where we're going to take you live to London right now. Simon Owen joins us now from Fox News Radio. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So we have at least 5 people are facing charges in Germany for performing Hitler salutes. How big is the news there on that?
Well, I mean, it's something that happens occasionally, but it is well known that it's a gesture that is banned. And so I think you can suspect that many of those people at least knew that they were going to be breaking the law when they did it. But it plays into the opinions that they wanted to express, I suppose, about something that's happened a few days ago in a city called Chemnitz, the place in eastern Germany. Tensions began here after a fatal stabbing last weekend. A 35-year-old German man was stabbed in the early hours of Sunday, and prosecutors said that 2 immigrants have been arrested, one Syrian man and one Iraqi man. And this has proved to be a sufficient spark to bring thousands of far-right protesters onto the streets in Chemnitz, along with smaller numbers of leftist counter-protesters. And it is reflecting a split in Germany today after Chancellor Angela Merkel, 3 years ago, at the height of Europe's migrant crisis, she opened the country's borders to refugees, and hundreds of thousands of people came in, and that was a decision that was welcomed by many in Germany, and it was a decision that was condemned by many in Germany. And 3 years later, it is still a dominant political subject.
So really, people can get arrested in Germany for the Hitler salute?
Yes, it's a long-standing ban. They clearly have a very sensitive and individual history in that country and a very dark past. And so, yeah, various things are illegal to do with it. And at the top of my head, I think the most notorious or the one that's most often cited is, I think, Mein Kampf, for instance. Hitler's main teachings is banned from publication still. So, yes, you can't perform the salute. And as I say, I think it's fair to assume that the vast majority of people are well aware that you can't perform the salute without getting spotted.
Wow, very different from the rest of the world on that. Obviously, is still very, very fresh and very sensitive, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, and Germany offers this, this fascinating example to the rest of the world of how you come back from something like the war, let alone how you deal with the reunification of a country, which is a more recent memory from the late 80s and early 90s, and how reunification goes. And it is a country that is still often accused of not doing enough, or at least until recently having not done enough to confront its past. We still now are occasionally getting word of alleged former Nazi prison camp guards being arrested in their mid-90s. And the reason that they're always in their mid-90s is because for a long time Germany was accused of not doing enough to find these people, and now it is trying to do that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an unusual law to ban the salute, but it's an unusual country in terms of its past.
Indeed. Simon, what's the mood in Germany concerning President Trump? Has anything changed? I know, depending on reports, he either gets along with Angela Merkel or he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes wonder if, on a very personal level, if they actually do okay. I mean, I think they are diametrically opposed in so many ways. I mean, they're both conservatives, but they just seem like very different people, don't they? I mean, and I've traveled with President Trump I don't think we've been to Germany yet, but I've seen him interacting with Chancellor Merkel, and I've also seen how President Obama interacted with Chancellor Merkel, and they got on very well indeed, even though, as I say, Merkel's a conservative and Obama's a liberal, but they had that very good relationship. Look, you're not going to get on with everyone, are you? And I think Merkel is established enough on the world stage to know that. As for what perceptions are like among the general population, it's hard to know, but a couple of trips I've made to Germany since President Trump's election, and I've been quite struck by some pretty vehement front pages on some of the big-selling news magazines. I think when I was there when the election happened, or just after, and when he was elected, and the front page of one of them was, "It's the end of the world," or something like that. So there is a certain amount of dramatic response there. But broadly in Western Europe, President Trump is not particularly popular. I think that's the most broad way you can draw that. But obviously that doesn't speak for every member of the population.
I thought you did, Simon.
It's incredibly hard to take the pulse of a continent of 500 million people.
If anyone could do it, Simon. You have a great day, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
Our great friend Simon Owen joining us, Fox News Radio. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So we're expecting a big bombshell to be dropped today. Let's get to Mike Allen commenting on Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd from Meet the Press basically saying that something big is going to happen today.
Announcement be, and why is there that speculation right now?
Yeah, well, Willie, we saw Chuck Todd say last night on MSNBC that he'll be coming to work today, and I can tell you so will the president's legal team. There's hot speculation among the president's lawyers that today might be a day of action for Robert Mueller. So it's the Justice Department's policy, don't have action in a criminal probe like in a hot election season. I think every federal prosecutor knows that except James Comey, who forgot that. And that's all the more reason that lawyers think that Robert Mueller may go quiet after Labor Day. So this would be the last working day before Labor Day. So could this be the day for a WikiLeaks indictment? Could he decide that that's going to be the last action before the election? People who know Bob Mueller well say he's unlikely to make a big announcement, that what could happen is after any action today, that he'll just go quiet till after the election.
Casey.
Hey, Mike, forgive me if this is too far off of your reporting, but it just occurs to me that, we're heading into a weekend where the country's going to be focused on Senator John McCain being laid to rest. And Bob Mueller, someone who we know has, great respect for that, who served himself in Vietnam. Do you think that would play into his thinking on this at all?
Casey, I think that's very astute. And we know that Bob Mueller is someone who is of Washington, having served as the FBI director, having been a federal prosecutor, someone who's very wired into Washington. And I agree with you that he might well be sensitive to that. It's just another reason that I have news for Rudy, that September 1st deadline is not going to be met.
There we have it. So the libs think something could happen today. By the way, getting back to John McCain, and a lot of people are lionizing Senator McCain. Joe Biden saying that he loved Senator McCain. Here's what Joe Biden had to say yesterday.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democrat. And I love John McCain.
There we have it. So McCain was great at reaching across the aisle. And McCain would admit to most of us that he wasn't perfect. And people have been lionizing John McCain. And you have a person who didn't do well at the Naval Academy, almost blew up the ship that he was on because he was goofing off. Because he was an admiral's son, didn't get discharged for that. Was shot down, tortured horribly. Showed tremendous bravery in Vietnam, came home, got a divorce. First marriage didn't work out. He acknowledged his failures in that. Got married to the woman whose daddy owned the big Anheuser-Busch distribution place. Went to Congress, was a member of the Keating Five. And then John McCain distinguished himself by being this maverick, if you will, working with Democrats. But if you were a member of the Tea Party If you were a conservative, John McCain was not your guy. The Bushes and the McCains did not get along. It's surprising that President Bush and former President Obama are going to be giving the eulogies. I would just expect Obama to do it. And that's one thing that the media isn't saying, and obviously they won't. Obviously, that's great for us. This show is like working at the mall. People are always going to be messy, so we have job security, we hope. So at 580-5436, John McCain is being lionized and everything else. And I guess at your own funeral, you can have your own shot, but apparently at the end they played Frank Sinatra's My Way. And apparently McCain was meticulous in choreographing this, that Sarah Palin has not been invited to his funeral. Now, again, it's my party. I can invite who I want, but Sarah Palin and Nicole Wallace and Steve Schmidt, and John Weaver, all these inside people. And by the way, Schmidt, Wallace, and Weaver were no fans of Sarah Palin. Not invited to the funeral at McCain's request. And I'm thinking, Sarah Palin always stood by John McCain. Sarah Palin was vilified for jumping on the national stage. And let your leftist revisionist hearts not be troubled. If Sarah Palin did not jump on that ticket, it would have been a 50-state blowout. But you're never going to hear that now, are you? From the libs, from the Democrats, from the progressives. Because we're not educated by the media today. We're indoctrinated by it. You have people that watch, John McCain was great. Why can't we be like that? Because John McCain did not do well and did not take care of people in his own party. John McCain was the first Republican candidate to be vilified by the base. They revolted against him. Why did they revolt against him? Because he didn't represent their values. So I think it's a shame that Senator McCain is not inviting Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin has made a lot of money, has been through a horrible mess. But I will say this about Sarah Palin. She's a good person. And Sarah Palin could have just stayed in Alaska, maybe become a senator, done whatever she wanted, and not ever had any of this national scrutiny. Right? But she stood up for John McCain. Because if McCain had picked Lieberman, as many of us know, it wouldn't have even been close. Sarah Palin, God bless her, is the reason why, is the exact reason why that McCain had a chance in 2008. Not much of a chance, but a chance. You remember that speech? I felt like I was at either a revival or a pep rally for a football game. So it's fascinating, and you're probably not going to get anybody else in the media nationally or locally to, opine about John McCain's funeral. Look, it's his funeral. He can do what he wants. But, it's funny. The anti-Trumpers, the never-Trumpers, Wallace, Schmidt, Weaver, they've been left out in the cold as well. But again, that's the mark of a man, the pluses and the minuses. And John McCain, in life and in death, living up to his reputation. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I go back to this statement yesterday by Governor Cuomo.
New York State is the state that says we will not cooperate with ICE. They're a bunch of thugs.
Right. How do you react to that if you're a member of law enforcement? I'd like to hear from you next. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, The Kevin Miller Show on KIDO Talk Radio.
In a statement to Fox News, Rich McHugh, who left NBC's investigative unit this month, said the order to stop pursuing the story on Harvey Weinstein came as he and Ronan Farrow were about to go to Los Angeles for an interview with one of Weinstein's accusers. The statement follows reporting from the New York Times and the Daily Beast on the Weinstein story by Farrow. NBC has issued a statement saying the assertion that NBC tried to kill the Weinstein story was ludicrous and an outright lie. The Daily Beast reports that NBC News General Counsel Susan Weiner threatened to smear Farrow if he continued to report on the Weinstein story. Farrow ultimately won a Pulitzer Prize for his Weinstein reporting. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Amazing. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Can you believe that? Hank in Boise. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Hello, Hank.
Good morning. I would say that McCain, no doubt about it, he was a brave man, and I can't fault him for what he did in Vietnam for his conduct as a prisoner of war. But his naval career was anything, as you say, anything but distinguished. Bottom of his class, Annapolis, almost washed out of Pensacola. The fact that his father wasn't the admiral in chief of the Pacific, he probably would not have been flying planes. And on top of that, it was the missile that killed so many people on the Forrestal and burned the ship badly came from his plane. And he's not like I said, I think that this shows that there's a certain lack of judgment here.
Well, getting back to that missile that killed so many and burned so many, take us through that, would you?
Well, it was the missile was I'll try to think of the name of it. It begins with an H, but it was released. And when I was in the Navy, they used to show films of the Forrestal thing, what went wrong, because there was problems with the crew in terms of how they handled the fire. They poured water on it, for instance, which on a fuel fire spread it. And McCain, there was a lot of dispute about that. The official thing was that some sort of electrical discharge caused the missile to shoot out from the plane and basically start the fire on the Forrestal. Some other reports said that basically that McCain was trying to do a hot start or extra fuel burn on his 4A4 plane. It was kind of hot dogging, which started the fire.
Right, which he is prohibited from doing and did it anyway. Again, according to one report.
Yeah, he was sort of like a spoiled brat. In his conduct, and his behavior in the Senate was in a lot of ways the same way. He always wanted to be the center of attention. What better way of getting the center of attention by being a maverick? What makes you stand out, and what makes you adored by the? And he did it at the expense of fellow Republicans, and he undermined Bush's initiatives all the time. And he tried to and you know, if this vote on health care, Obamacare, was principled, he voted to repeal it many times. What he did was personal spite. I'm mean King, nobody crosses me. You know, that type of attitude.
You're exactly right about that. Of course, you only hear it from Hank and me on 107.5 FM KIDO Talk Radio, and that's what they're missing part of this story. You know, the whole thumbs down thing and what a man of character. Well, he wasn't that way to conservatives, and to not invite Sarah Palin, who did nothing wrong, to your funeral. I mean, I guess it's his funeral.
Sarah Palin did more to save that candidacy.
Right.
And if he had campaigned and not suspended his campaign, and he'd gotten off the kick of trying to kiss up to the press, he would have had a shot at it. I'm not saying that he wouldn't necessarily win. There were a lot of, but Palin made the race competitive, and there were a lot of us. I include myself in this. I voted in every presidential election since 1972. Never missed one, and I was tempted not to vote in that. I was so disgusted by it.
You're right, Hank. Thank you, brother. Good morning, Dave.